The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
The Supreme Court has banned mobile phone spying without a warrant. This was a unanimous decision today from the Roberts Court, 9-0. Police now need a warrant to search the cell phone of a person who has been arrested, absent some very specific special circumstances, according to a unanimous Supreme Court decision. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote in the majority opinion, the unanimous majority opinion, modern cell phones are not just another technological convenience. With all they contain and all they may reveal, they hold for many Americans the privacies of life. The fact that technology now allows an individual to carry such information in his hand does not make the information any less worthy of the protection for which the founders fought. Our answer to the question of what police must do before searching a cell phone seized incident to an arrest searching a cell phone seized incident to an arrest is accordingly simple: get a warrant. Before this, for putting aside the special circumstances, it actually became kind of a popular thing, YouTube videos and other discussions of what to do with your cell phone when the police pulls you over to avoid a warrantless search of it. And a convention that seemed to be quite prevalent was put it inside of your glove compartment and lock it, because that makes it abundantly clear, and retroactively an attorney would be able to argue successfully, presumably before a court, that it was private and that a warrant definitely would be needed to enter that locked glove compartment. That seemingly now, Lewis, no longer necessary based on this decision.
Right. This is big. This is an important decision. It's the right decision. Still, it seems that the NSA can still intercept your calls, your texts, your
right.
emails. Of course, this seems to have no bearing on that.
So those are the two considerations. Consideration number one, does this mean that the Roberts Court, in all of its corruption and conservatism, has actually come down to the left politically of the Obama administration when it comes to this particular issue? Well, that kind of depends on the second issue, which Lewis is talking about, which is let's not conflate police warrant requirements for mobile phones and support from the Obama and previous administrations of NSA spying via technological means. I am already seeing online, Lewis, some conflation of the two issues. We shouldn't conflate them. This decision has nothing to do with the NSA. That being said, we should always remember that whatever it is that police are going to do during an individual traffic stop, what they are or aren't able to do, this has no bearing whatsoever on what the NSA is able to do. Which one concerns you more, Lewis? What the police can do with your mobile phone or what the NSA can do?
Well, that's a tough question. I guess the answer would be the NSA.
I agree.
Yeah, because the NSA are more likely to make the phone call to have you captured and sent to a black site. The police might just throw you behind bars in the county jail for a little while.
Yeah, they might see that you actually did send a text during the time that they observed you against state law and then cite you for it, but it probably won't lead to you maybe being the target of a drone or whatever else may happen. Not to minimize the importance of this decision, of course, but let's both not conflate the two issues and remember to think about if and how they interact in any way. Matthew Schlegel sent me a very interesting graph that correlates two measurements, two statistics in the United States and around the world. The cost of healthcare spending per person across many countries and the life expectancy of those born in those countries. It's not good, ladies and gentlemen. It is not good. We talked last week of, it was either late last week or earlier this week, about how the United States has both the most expensive but lowest quality care. Now we are seeing how care and accessibility of care is connecting with life expectancy, and it is not good. If you look at this graph, you will see that in general, if we chart life expectancy versus spending per capita on healthcare, the more a country spends per person on healthcare, the longer the life expectancy is. Pretty simple. Except with this outlier dot, the United States, where healthcare spending is the highest of all of these countries measured, yet the life expectancy is nowhere near what it is in Japan, Italy, Norway, and so many other countries with lower healthcare spending. Lewis, it's very important not to conflate causation with correlation. This is one case where we know that we have an incredibly inefficient system. And I would be interested to really see how this works. We should redo the dot on this graph for the United States if we were to remove the bureaucratic spending, if we were to remove the profit margin, if we were to remove the entire medical billing industry, if we were to remove everything but actual care measured the way it is in these other countries, the US probably would fit in with some of these countries that are lower down on the spending scale and also lower down on the life expectancy scale.
Right. When you look at our per person spending, per capita spending, what percentage of that dollar amount actually goes off to all of these other things you just mentioned?
Exactly.
That would be very interesting to know. And I'm sure you're right that if the money just went to healthcare, we would have much better life expectancy.
As we know, very high levels of infant mortality in the United States, which of course affects life expectancy overall when you think about the numbers. The reason for that very high rate of infant mortality, in great part, is because mothers during their lives don't have the care they need, and thus when they finally are pregnant, there are problems that have developed during the period which they did not have access to care. It leads to increased infant mortality. It can lead to increased death in pregnancy for women. We see drastically unequal access to care in this country based on how much money people have. Even though there are safety nets for the poorest of Americans, it is often those who are simply right above that line where you qualify for free care if your state has such a program or has expanded Medicaid, etc. This is just an immoral system. This is a system that we should not have. This is a system that all of these other countries that spend less and have higher life expectancies have figured out. And I don't know when we're going to wake up, Lewis, or even get the political will to move in that direction.
I don't know. I don't know if Obamacare was a step in the right direction. Perhaps not, but it's going to be a very long and difficult battle.
The Sunday programs on the networks and on cable news have long been obsessed with the topic of Benghazi. Thus, it wasn't really crazy to think that after we captured one of the alleged ringleaders of that Benghazi attack, who was, by the way, released from Guantanamo Bay by George W. Bush during his administration, that the networks would be all over this on the Sunday programs. Unfortunately, that was not the case. The news of Ahmed Abu Khattala's capture on June 17th, immediately tagged by the Washington Post as a, quote, significant breakthrough for the Obama administration. However, Fox News' Sunday program, for example, Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace, they covered Benghazi nearly 100 times since the incident, did not talk about the capture of the alleged ringleader. And this didn't only apply to Fox News. This actually applied to all of the Sunday morning programs, none of them talking about what is obviously a really big deal. A guy that George W. Bush released has now been captured, and that individual has said that that original theory that the anti-Muslim video was at least partially responsible for the violence in Benghazi, that turns out to be true in spite of all the ad hominems and personal attacks that came from the right-wing conspiracy theories around that claim. No coverage at all. And in fact, David Gregory on Meet the Press, he did talk about Benghazi, but instead of talking about the capture of the alleged ringleader, instead, he allowed Rand Paul to talk about how we need answers from Hillary Clinton around Benghazi. David Gregory choosing, instead of talking about the obvious news related to Benghazi, we finally have actual news. Instead, he brings on Rand Paul and lets him just parrot conspiracy theories and attacks on Hillary Clinton. Just unbelievable. Where were the stories about the capture here?
More irresponsible coverage, or lack of coverage, I should say, from corporate media. But this goes back to what we were talking about, I think it was yesterday, how maybe it's not that interesting. I mean, certainly it's more interesting for people to hear about these giant conspiracies involving Hillary Clinton and the president and all sorts of things. But this maybe not as interesting as
Well,
that.
what I figured out, and you're alluding to it, Lewis, is that they don't really want, and by they I mean right-wingers kind of combined with corporate media, they don't really want answers. They claim they want answers, but they don't really want actual answers. They want their answers. They want a big reveal that one of their many conspiracy theories, all of which have fallen miserably apart, actually are true. And if they are getting real but inconvenient answers, they'd rather just bring on Rand Paul and let him parrot right-wing talking points.
Right. With these conspiracy theories, the people watching kind of create their own answers, which are similar to those answers that the right are looking for when it comes to Benghazi.
A Brooklyn federal district court judge has ruled that parents who choose not to vaccinate their children do not have a right to send those children to school if there is someone at the school who is currently suffering from a vaccine-preventable illness. This is according, as I said, to this Brooklyn judge who ruled that a parent's constitutional right to freely exercise their religion doesn't make their children exempt from vaccination requirements, and it does not make it a right for that child to be sent to school. New York City schools, for people who don't know, require all students to get basic vaccinations in order to enter school. In New York State, along with several other states, laws say that parents can opt out of those requirements if it is for religious reasons. That's ridiculous at its face, okay? But we're not going to focus on that because I really want to focus on this decision. There were 3 families in New York City that tried to do this, but their children were barred from attending school, and this led them to file a lawsuit against the city. And the city decided in this decision from this district court judge that based on a 1905 Supreme Court case in which a court ruled that Massachusetts was permitted to fine a man $5 for refusing a smallpox vaccine, Judge William Kuntz ruled that the court had strongly suggested that religious objectors are not constitutionally exempt from vaccinations. The plaintiffs will appeal this ruling, but this is basic common sense. If there's someone in the school who has a vaccine-preventable illness, like measles, for example, you don't have a right to send your unvaccinated kid to that school, possibly perpetrating the spread of this disease. It's just common sense. And Lewis, as a parent of an unvaccinated kid, why would you want to send your unvaccinated kid to a school where someone has a vaccine-preventable illness? Is that not just asking for your kid to catch the disease?
I think there's a lot of ignorance when it comes to this. So maybe those parents don't even know, aren't aware of it, or think that everything will be fine and these types of diseases and illnesses aren't a big deal. But I agree. This makes sense. It seems to be common sense to me, and we'll see what happens. Perhaps it will end up being ruled on in a higher court.
48 states currently allow for these exemptions against vaccination for sincerely held religious beliefs. I almost throw up a little bit in my mouth every time I use that term, Lewis, because it's just amazing how the term sincerely held religious beliefs is being used in this country as a cover for anti-science thought, for anti-equality thought, for straight up bigotry. So we will see where this goes. If this is appealed, it is expected to be appealed. This could really become a landmark decision, a precedent setter along these vaccine refusals based on religion. Let's take a break. We have an excellent program for you today. We have a very, very interesting Hatriot Mail coming up. And also, I will debate a libertarian on the minimum wage. Will we agree? Will they resort to juvenile, absolutist libertarian beliefs, as many libertarians do? We will see.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Remember that you can support the David Pakman Show if you ever shop on Amazon.com. First, go to our website, davidpakman.com, and on the right side, you'll see a big Amazon banner. Click on it, and then just do your shopping. You don't have to fill out any forms. You have to do nothing extra, and Amazon will send us a kickback. I recommend bookmarking the link and then just use it whenever you shop on Amazon. Set it and forget it. You can also become a David Pakman Show member, made possible in part by liberalbias.com. When conservatives unskew liberally biased numbers, they can prove some pretty amazing facts. For example, President Obama has driven unemployment up above 50%. I know you're not hearing that on the liberal media, but you can find the real numbers at liberalbias.com. Today's new member of the day is Danny ABA Jacobson. I'm not completely sure about that first of two last names. Danny ABA Jacobson. Danny ABA Jacobson. In any case, join Danny, whose name may have just been butchered, as a David Pakman Show member by going to davidpakman.com/membership. Be a supporter. Vote for better media with your own dollars. Very exciting stuff. Lewis now up to... You've got 3.6 billion memberships now, right?
They're very hard to keep track of, David, and I know it's hard to keep up with all the emails on your end, but yes, I do.
Okay, today's Wednesday, and we have a very special Hatriot mail for you today.
If Ayn Rand and Ronald Reagan had a baby and suckled that child off the teat of liberty, its cries would sound a little something like... Patriot Mail, written by patriots who hate David Pakman, because America, and because freedom.
I want to warn everybody that today's Hatriot Mail may be a little confusing. You may have trouble figuring out exactly what this Hatriot is trying to say. So let's listen very carefully and try to decipher it. There's a long list of grievances and criticisms here, okay? I'm just warning you, it's not a simple Hatriot mail. Let's listen. Let's see if we can ascertain the meaning here. Very exciting.
I've been watching you and your boyfriend Lewis for quite some time now. What is it that makes you think liberalism is a good thing? Liberalism supports impractical equality, is politically correct beyond the point of reason. Gender roles are a bad thing? Give me a break. People like you are destroying society. I noticed your video on Islam. Not surprising that a Jew like yourself would want to criticize Islam. You have to have a bias against Islam or just be really stupid to insult Islam. All arguments against it are laughably stupid. Go pull your head out of your rear and give up atheism and liberalism.
Okay, this is unique because this may be the first, the person who sent this in is a known entity to us. And this may be the first Muslim Hatriot mail that we've received from a Muslim individual. And, you know, there's so much stuff in there about Lewis being my boyfriend, about gender roles, about atheism, about liberalism. I want to focus specifically on what they're talking about, being able to criticize Islam. What we said was that caused this thing. It was a few weeks ago. We said that there is a difference between Islamophobia and disproportionate discrimination against people simply because they are Muslim, which is a bad thing, and being able to criticize Islam in the exact same way that we would criticize any religion. And we spoke about the importance of those things not to be conflated, Lewis. But very interesting, this is the first Muslim Hatriot mail. Normally it's from sovereign Christians that we receive Hatriot mail.
Usually, yes. And I would say to this Hatriot that here on this show we criticize religions. Islam is one of them. And the rest are all equally criticized. We don't, we don't single anyone out here.
No, it is all fair game, and I don't know. I don't know what else to say, but there were just so many things there in that Hatriot mail, really throwing in everything that they could think of. And even when the focus is Islam and Judaism, there's still an opportunity to open it up with the homophobic stuff, suggesting, of course, that Lewis is my boyfriend, which is not that rare of a comment from Hatriots, interestingly enough. We'll have to look into that a little more. Pat Robertson. Pat Robertson hosts the 700 Club program. He has, just in the last few months, given us such gems as a doctor once raised a patient from the dead with prayer alone, that Sweden is just like North Korea, that Obamacare kills but then helps a woman sign up for Obamacare anyway, says that Jews are too busy polishing their diamonds to fix up their vehicles, and that an atheist coworker might be a demon-possessed rape survivor. He also said that horror movies, feng shui, yoga, karate, horoscopes, Twilight, paintings of Buddha, Halloween, psychics, and young girls levitating their friends at sleepovers, as well as sometimes children adopted from other countries, are all demonically possessed. Well, he received a question from a 700 Club viewer that I have a really hard time believing is not a parody, that it is not a satire question, but in any case, it was about a house that seems to be demonically possessed. I believe this absolutely has to be a joke. Listen to Pat Robertson's advice for the woman.
Okay, this is Lori who says, my husband and I moved into a house a year ago. I'm a strong Christian with unwavering faith. I believe the Lord tried to stop us from buying it at every turn. Everything has been very difficult here. Everything has to be redone, rehung, etc. The last few months, weird things have been happening in the home. I've seen doors open and close on their own. We can't find something and then it appears, and things fall off shelves without reason. What do you recommend? I've prayed and cast it out, but I believe it will take more than one person to make this stop.
I'd sell that house in a heartbeat. I would run to the nearest realtor, put it on the market, cut the price in half, and get out. That's what I would do as fast as you can. If you don't like that, get a bunch of believers to come in there and go room by room and anoint every room, plead the blood of Jesus, and cast demons out. But man, you're in for a long fight. Get out! There are plenty of houses. Why live in a haunted house?
You have to plead the blood of Jesus to cast the demons out. Lewis, this is mental illness, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. It seems like it could be, but if you live your whole life being told that this stuff is real, can we call it mental illness?
Can you imagine? Let's just forget about the mental illness component of suggesting that you need to cast out demons by pleading the blood of Jesus. The advice is to sell the house for whatever you can. Sell it at half price if you need to. Of course, for most people, if you were to sell your home at half of what you purchased it for, this is financial ruin for your life that you may never be able to escape out from under. And Pat Robertson, who in the past has said, no matter what your financial situation is, no matter whether you're having trouble paying for your home or paying for your health insurance, you always must continue tithing to your church. That Pat Robertson says, you know what? The house is clearly demonically possessed. It is a haunted home. Sell it for half price, basically ruining your financial situation. Unless this is a very wealthy person, that type of a sale would ruin you financially. This is downright immoral, irresponsible advice from Pat Robertson. And if it is not a fake question, if you are really the type of person that would honestly ask Pat Robertson for advice, you're probably crazy enough to follow the advice, which makes this even more dangerous.
Yeah, and I think that if a doctor can bring back someone from the dead with a prayer, why can't these demons be expelled from the house by, I don't know, some doctor or some preacher? Who knows?
And by the way, Pat Robertson is also suggesting selling the demon-possessed house to some sucker who's not going to know about the demonic possession. How is that moral?
Right. Now someone else has to deal with it, and they have to sell it for half the price they got it for. When does it end?
This is an incredible story. A 4-year-old in Ferndale, Washington, alerted police to the fact that her babysitter was lying about a home invasion that took place a few days ago. Milwaukee's WITI reported that Abby Dean's 17-year-old babysitter came up with this plan to steal a whole bunch of stuff from the Dean household, okay? And after this happened, she went to the police and she said, these armed black men came into the house. I didn't recognize them, but one of them looks like our black neighbor, Cody Oakes. Now, this I don't understand. If these armed black dangerous men that came in to rob you were not people you recognized, how did one of them look like the black next door neighbor? Do you understand that, Lewis? I don't get it at all. Tim, if I were a police officer, that would be the first red flag. Never seen these dangerous black men before. One of them looked just like that guy next door.
Yeah, it's either she wanted him to go down for this? Or, I mean, normally you would just say I didn't recognize them and leave it at that, but maybe she hates this kid.
So police went over to the next door neighbor, this black individual named Cody Oakes. They questioned him for hours. Ultimately, though, the little girl went to police and said, no, the neighbor can't be the robber because his skin color isn't the right one. Police thought this was a little weird. They called the babysitter. The babysitter broke down. They said it was her own boyfriend. She set up the entire thing. And just amazing that we still have this blame the dangerous black guy thing and a 4-year-old girl. And this really shows how children don't have these ideas that black people are dangerous or that gay parents are weird in some way. This, of course, is taught to them. There's nothing natural about those beliefs. There's nothing obvious about those beliefs. And the little girl saying, no, the guy who did the robbing was white, and blowing the entire case wide open for the police.
Right. And I mean, perhaps if the girl didn't break down, things might have stayed the same, and they never would have been caught. But I guess maybe she had, a cloudy conscience.
I thought it would be funny to apply the same logic to this that Christians are applying to saying they are being discriminated against by not being allowed to discriminate against gay people, which is, look at this situation, Lewis. A white person can't even blame minorities and get away with it anymore. This is clearly an attack on white people.
White people have been criminalized.
Being white is criminalized now because you can't blame the black guy next door.
What a terrible disaster.
Okay, next, Wayne Allen Root, former Libertarian vice presidential nominee, will talk about the minimum wage with me. I wonder if he will present any actual facts in his argument. Let's try to look for those pesky facts and see if he mentions any.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Back on the program today is Wayne Allen Root. He is the 2008 Libertarian Party vice presidential nominee, American politician, entrepreneur, political commentator, also author of the forthcoming book, The Murder of the Middle Class. And he's here today to talk about the minimum wage. Wayne, I don't want to summarize your position because you do it so well. You're not thrilled with the push to increase the minimum wage in the United States. Why is that?
Well, because I'm a small businessman. And first of all, only I know what I can afford to pay my employees. It's impossible. It's not unlikely. It's not bad. It's impossible. Literally, I can't say it any stronger, for a government a politician or a government bureaucrat to know what I should be paying my employees. And if you do think you know what I should pay my employees, my reaction will be I'll just fire half the employees. And that's what happens every single time that minimum wage is increased anywhere in the world. Look at Greece, look at Spain, look at Italy. You've got 60% youth unemployment. Minimum wage is basically not for poor people. For the most part, it's for young people with entry-level jobs. And if you're going to make me raise it, I just can't afford to have that many employees. So I'll just have to fire half of them. And really, government has no right to even tell me what I could pay people in my own private business.
All right, so let's put aside for a second the government having the right to or not, because that issue is less interesting since it's not one anybody's going to be able to change. There is a minimum wage. Let's talk about the facts on the ground of the effect of a minimum wage increase on unemployment. We don't have to look at Greece. We don't have to look at those countries. We can look at the United States, and we have plenty of information. And if you do an analysis, if you look at 2 decades worth of minimum wage increases, when you look at the minimum wage increases from 1987 to 2012, 52% of the time, and this is only looking when unemployment was already over 7%, okay, which is we would say we can't really tolerate too much more unemployment. 52% of the time, the unemployment rate went down in the year following the minimum wage increase. 4 times there was no change, and then the rest it went down. So at best, it's mere chance whether the minimum wage increase has an effect on employment.
Well, all I'm going to point out to you is that this morning, the opening statistics as I woke up were that we had one of the worst quarters in the history of America. down negative 2.9% GDP growth. The country's coming apart at the seams. And to ask for a minimum wage increase now when businessmen across America like me are dying, starving, going bankrupt is insanity.
Well, listen, Wayne, I don't know exactly the details of your business, and if you say you're starving, I believe you. I guess I didn't know you were in such financial dire straits, but you claim to be starving. That's bad. But
every business I've got is down by 60 to 70%, not 10%, not 5%, 60 to 70%. I have friends who are doing worse than me. I have friends who've gone bankrupt. I have friends who've lost their homes. The middle class is being murdered, and I define middle class as small business and down.
Well, Wayne, we've got to take a step back here. You can define any of this stuff however you want. You can give us the business disasters that you're facing, but how does that connect with a minimum wage increase? How can you connect
it connects because we can't afford it. It's impossible. Government can't demand that I raise wages at a time where the GDP is melting down, and by the way, there are no jobs.
But Wayne, that's a different. Whether the government can demand it or not, we agreed to not focus on that. Let me try a different tactic here. Okay. High school economics class. I took high school economics class, and in high school, I was 16 years old. I learned about marginal propensity to consume, which tells us that if you give a little more money to someone in the lower middle class, the likelihood that they will spend that money reinvigorating the economy is exponentially larger than if that money is kept by a big corporation or by a rich person. And by and large, did you want to comment on that part?
Yeah. I want to give you my basic, simple economics that I've learned in my life.
Well, but hold on. Let me at least frame up the whole question.
Someone has to pay for it. So all your prices are going up. So when you raise the minimum wage of, say, or the wages in general of 2 million people that work for Walmart, what you're also doing is raising the prices of every item sold at Walmart.
No, but Wayne,
million consumers.
We have to keep this fact-based, and numerous analyses on both Walmart and McDonald's have shown that even if you were to double the minimum wage paid, which would significantly affect those businesses because they have a lot of minimum wage employees, as you admit, that it would have only a slight impact on the prices they would have to charge to maintain equal profitability. That's the fact.
And the fact is that the murder of the middle class, which is the name of my new book, is all about the fact that politicians and big government are in bed with big business. All you ever talk about, David, is the effect on Walmart, but you don't talk about me, a guy who's got
let's talk. I'm trying to talk about that. I'm trying to talk about that.
Small business creates all your jobs, and it's going to be destroyed.
I agree, but hold on a second, Wayne. First, you mentioned Walmart, and when I told you you were wrong about Walmart, you said I'm trying to talk about Walmart. I want to talk about small business, so let me frame up a question here and get you to respond.
You have no statistic that will ever show you that small business can afford more wages, higher wages, or more employees. There is no such statistic. All my friends are small businessmen, David.
Listen, I'm also a small businessman. This is my small business. This program, we have employees, we have staff. So let me posit to you how I see this. Okay, I have a handful of employees, as you do. If the minimum wage goes up, now I'm not paying my employees minimum wage, but let's say that their current wages went up by the same percentage. That's true. And they would. So let's buy into that. My costs go slightly up. You're absolutely right. Everybody who is of lower and middle income has a little bit more money. The fact that we have millions and millions of people making a little more means that I now have millions of people who can way more than offset the increase to the 5 employees I have, and it's new customers. And we see this all over the country. If you look at San Francisco years ago had a much higher minimum wage than anywhere else in the country. It applied to fast food, it applied to small business, it was across the board. And they were able to have better employment results than the rest of the country. How do you explain that?
Listen, there's only 2 things that happen when you increase wages, when government demands an increase in wages without any idea whether it can work. Big business offshores jobs. That's why America is losing big business jobs.
But hold on, Wayne. Wayne. I thought your concern wasn't the big business.
and small business goes out of business. You cannot, as government, tell me what wages I can afford to pay my employees. What you're doing is you're destroying small business, and it's always an advantage to big business. And by the way, that's how crony capitalism works. Every single thing that has happened under the Obama administration, who supposedly is such a fan of the little guy, has benefited big business.
Well, you know what? I agree with you that in general, the policies of all presidential administrations benefit big business. That part I'm with you on. But what I want to get to is what business specifically has gone out of business because of an increase to the minimum wage of pennies an hour? Give me a specific business.
David, I'm not here to give you that. I didn't come prepared with statistics of the names of businesses that have gone out.
Because it doesn't exist.
I can tell you that Spain and Italy and Greece and France are completely bankrupt, completely wrecked economies.
Wayne, I know. I've seen you do so many interviews. I know that you're being deceptive. European countries have been in a banking and currency crisis that is unrelated to the minimum wage driving individual businesses out of business. I want to make one more case.
Spending, big government, high taxes, and unionization. And of course, that big one that I'm sure you love, David, free healthcare.
You're conflating unrelated issues, and you have offered no rebuttal to the idea that is a widely known basic economic idea. I learned it when I was 16. That when you stimulate the lower and middle class, that money is spent at small businesses, Really? That is an absolute fact.
So Obama's economic stimulus of almost $1 trillion turned into 6 of the worst economic years in the history of America, no jobs, and now negative 2.8% GDP in the first quarter. Therefore, that stimulus added up to people spending?
Wayne, this is sophistry. Wayne, this is sophistry. Every respectable economist has said that the economic situation would have been even worse were it not for that stimulus.
David, I just saw the statistic that not just in America, but in countries all over the world, not one economist got a recession right since the year 2000. Not one. Poll after poll asked economists, is a recession coming in your country? And since 2000, there have been multiple recessions in different countries all around the world, and 0 economists got it right. Typical. They're just like politicians, David. They go to Harvard. They study books. They know nothing about the real world.
Oh my goodness,
They've
Wayne!
Never owned a business.
I can't believe you're doing the we can't trust anybody who reads books thing. Okay, listen, Wayne. You've presented what I guess are arguments.
David, by the way, you should know. I graduated Columbia University, and my daughter just graduated magna cum laude from Harvard University.
Magna cum laude or summa cum laude?
No, magna cum laude.
Okay, all right, just making sure.
My only point is that going to Harvard and Columbia does not make you a great economist.
All right. I think that the audience will judge, and they will research, and they will see. If you look for evidence that the minimum wage kills jobs, you will find none, and Wayne has presented none, but it's always great to have him on. Wayne Root, the book is, tell us about the book and when people can get it.
The book is The Murder of the Middle Class. It's out July 14th, available now, pre-sale at Amazon. And you'll be happy to know, David, the book is not an indictment of Democrats and liberals and Obama. It's an indictment of all politicians, of all parties. It's an indictment of government. Government isn't here to help you. Government constantly makes things worse. Today's GDP results are fact and proven results that government is not helping anyone in this economy.
All right, we're going to have Wayne back to talk about absolutist, juvenile, libertarian beliefs. We're going to need him for like an hour to cover that topic. Thanks.
Maybe a day.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thanks, David.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Joseph Farah is the founder of conspiracy birther right-wing website WorldNet Daily. He was also a guest on this program years ago. He was stopped by police at an airport with a loaded gun in his carry-on luggage. He had a loaded .38 caliber revolver in his carry-on bag, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center. A spokesperson for Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, he was stopped at Dulles Airport, just outside Washington, D.C., told the SPLC that he was released pending a summons and is facing a Class 1 misdemeanor charge for carrying a gun in an airport terminal. The SPLC points out this is not the first time that Joseph Farah has had a run-in with the TSA. Back in 2010, he wrote a column about his TSA nightmare, which involved, as he claimed, a broken suitcase, rumpled clothing, a broken zipper, and bad customer service, plus systematic violations of Americans' constitutional rights. He has published 2 columns since this incident, which happened over the weekend. Neither of them addressed the TSA at all. Talking Points memo tried to reach Joseph Farah yesterday. Those attempts were unsuccessful. If it was deliberate, if he deliberately tried to bring a loaded gun through security, that's criminal, and it seems like it should be more than a Class 1 misdemeanor. If it was inadvertent, anyone who can lose track of a loaded gun shouldn't really be allowed to have a gun. Isn't that an irresponsible gun owner, a bad guy with a gun?
Right. Now, I, of course, brought a large knife onto a plane accidentally.
Right.
I forgot it was in there. Would that ever happen with me with a gun? Well, considering I don't own any, I guess not. But I would like to think no. But I guess if you own lots of guns and have guns in various bags all the time, it could have been an accident.
Yeah, and let's remember what Lewis brought on. We've been calling it a large knife, but the reality is it's a multi-tool that had, among various tools, it did have a blade, which was slightly larger than what you're supposed to bring onto a plane. But of course, it's a drastically different situation.
Right, of course. The damage you can do with a gun like that, the knife is nothing compared to that.
So I wonder if and when Joseph Farah will address this on WorldNet Daily, which is just an incredible website. I actually check out WorldNet Daily with some regularity because it is just so utterly insane. It's laughably insane. I wonder if this topic will be addressed.
It probably will, and he'll probably also call this a violation of his rights.
The fact that he wasn't allowed to have the loaded gun.
Probably, yeah.
Okay, a Republican says that pedophilia is like homosexuality. We've heard this before. This was during a discussion of a charter school bill in the North Carolina House yesterday. Lawmakers were talking about a proposal that would prevent charter schools from discriminating against applicants based on sexual orientation and gender identity. It seems that every single time that a conversation comes up about not discriminating based on sexual orientation or gender identity, it is either called a violation of sincerely held religious beliefs, or it is just met with incredible anti-gay homophobia and bigotry. In this particular case, it was the latter. During the debate, Republican Congressman Paul Stam from Wake, North Carolina, I know I don't have to tell you this, but he's a Republican. He said that pedophilia, masochism, and other illegal sexual practices are sexual orientations, just like homosexuality. Of course, this is completely against what all of the medical science says, which is that pedophilia is a mental illness, while homosexuality is a sexual orientation. Of course, anybody who is a rational, clear-thinking individual, Lewis, knows that there is nothing in common between the two. But this is a pretty common refrain from the anti-gay right, which is being attracted to other men, if you are a man, is identical to being attracted to little boys. And of course, it's just not backed up by any actual science, but that's never stopped these guys.
This is kind of just more of the same. I mean, as they lose the battle, we see desperate tactics like this. And I think we'll see more of it. It's just, like I said, more of the same. We
will. Indiana and Utah, I believe. This just came across the wire service just before we started today's show, so we'll talk about it tomorrow. But Utah and Indiana both seem to be moving forward on same-sex marriage. These guys are losing really, really quickly. And it either must be that they resort to equating pedophilia with homosexuality because, number one, they're just really upset that they're losing, or number two, they're battling some very intense demons themselves that are resulting in them making these outlandish claims.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive. Well, I think it's both.
No, it may be. Very good point. Send us your thoughts on this via email or via voicemail. We have a voicemail number. It is 219-2-DAVID-P. Here is one voicemail. Apparently somebody having a lot of trouble with their membership. Listen to this.
David, Lewis, This is Greg Overand from South Carolina.
Okay.
I love your show, love you guys. I'm a supporter of Free Speech TV and a member of your show since January, but it's starting to piss me off a little bit. I've been sending emails asking how to get the password to see your bonus show. I have gotten no response from emails. So
all right, so let me stop here. Greg, I apologize for the frustration. We've written you back every time. I think our emails must be going to your spam folder or something. I don't know. Keep emailing us. We've responded every time. We want you as a member to be able to check out the bonus show because the bonus show is very, very exciting. Lewis hosts it, and it is just, it's a riot. I don't know how else to tell you. So email us again. Make sure you have whitelisted our email addresses. But we're not ignoring you, buddy. We appreciate your membership. Here's one more voicemail. Listen to this.
Hi, this is David Wallace from Anderson, South Carolina. I believe your comparison of Rick Santorum to the Sharia loons on the other side is very apt. The so-called Christian extremists of his ilk, they're never going to buy it when they see that so many people support the gay marriage or unions or whatever. Their attitude is that any so-called Christians that do that aren't real Christians.
Yeah.
So they think they and some 2% maybe of all the people who are professing Christians are the only real ones out there. I mean, when you get into that sort of lunatic mindset, they make their own rules.
Yeah, we've been getting great calls from South Carolina recently, by the way. Brilliant point, which is, if we step back for a second, a very small percentage of American Christians are on the loony right to the extent that Rick Santorum and all of these extremists are. And that has become the tactic, Lewis, which is if someone is a Christian non-extremist and says, you know, your views aren't sounding very Jesus-like to me, the attack is, well, you aren't a real Christian. You're not really following the word of God, which is, of course, arbitrarily evaluated by people like Rick Santorum, and they're setting the guidelines for what is really Christianity. Very common thing now. They aren't real Christians.
And I think we see that in all of the major religions. Those extremists will point to the people who are not the extremists and say the exact same thing, I think, across the board.
On today's bonus show, we will talk about guitarists who exercise their right to carry. We will talk about Detroit shutting off water for thousands of people, and a federal judge has deemed the no-fly list unconstitutional. How do you access the bonus show? Very easy. Become a David Pakman Show member at davidpakman.com/membership. Lewis hosts the bonus show. I am the sidekick on the bonus show. And Friday, we may be getting another beer review from Lewis. These are very, very exciting. Last week, Lewis, was it Scotch or bourbon? To be honest, I don't even know the difference.
It was a bourbon, David, and you should know the difference, even though you hate all of it. It's important.
All right, we'll talk about that on the bonus show too, maybe. Lewis can explain it to me. See you on the bonus show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.